This time, we're discussing how to make a change, rewriting your life story. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into something that affects every single one of us, the story we tell ourselves about who we are. What if that story, the one you've been living by, is actually holding you back? We're going to look at the psychology of your narrative identity, the real science behind making a lasting change, and then give you a step-by-step guide to rewrite that story for good.
And I'm Ben. It's great to be here. Alex, you're starting us off with a huge question. What unseen force is shaping your life? It's so easy to point fingers at things outside of ourselves, right? Our job, our boss, the economy. But what if the biggest driver, the most powerful force, is actually inside us? It's this invisible script we follow every single day, dictating how we see the world and what we do.
Exactly, Ben. And that's why this quote from Tony Robbins just hits the nail on the head. Change your story, change your life. It's so simple, but it's incredibly profound. It suggests that real transformation isn't about waiting for the world to change around you. It's about changing the narrative you've built inside you. That's where the real power is. It's in your hands. So let's get into it. What is this unseen force? Well, it's the story that's steering your life. And we're not just talking about a collection of memories. This is an active, ongoing narrative. Think of it like a mental filter that colors every experience, every feeling, and every single decision you make. That's right, Alex. A story, in this sense, isn't just some fairy tale. It's your entire belief system. It defines who you think you are, what you believe you're capable of, and maybe, most importantly, what you think you can't do. Psychologists have a term for this in action: confirmation bias. Our brains literally look for evidence to prove our stories right. So if your story is, "I'm just not a morning person," guess what? You'll hit snooze, feel groggy, and prove it to yourself every day. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And here's the really crucial part. We're not always the ones who wrote the first draft. So many of these core stories are handed to us. They're written by our parents' beliefs, by a throwaway comment from a teacher that stuck with us, or by the thousands of messages we get from society. We just absorb them without even realizing it, accept them as fact, and then we live on autopilot, never stopping to ask, wait a minute, is this story even true? And is it helping me? Absolutely. You're listening to OOTO TV with research by author Paul Bulow. This idea is perfectly shown in Martin Seligman's famous experiments on what he called learned helplessness. It's fascinating, really. First, subjects were put in a situation with a negative stimulus they couldn't get away from. Naturally, after a while, they just gave up and accepted it. But here's the mind-blowing part. Later, the scientists changed the rules and escape became possible. But the subjects didn't even try. They did nothing. They had so deeply internalized the story that they were powerless, that they couldn't even see the open door right in front of them. It's a powerful and frankly kind of scary analogy for how our own limiting stories can blind us to opportunities for real change. That's so true, Ben. So if we're all walking around with these invisible scripts, how in the world do we start to uncover them? Well, let's look at the psychological framework that actually helps us understand and analyze these personal narratives we've been living by. Right, there's actually a formal name for this in psychology. It's called narrative identity. It's the story we build for ourselves to make sense of everything: our past, our values, our hopes for the future. But the most important word in that definition is evolving. It isn't fixed in stone. This isn't just a pop psychology idea. It's a recognized field of study. It tells us that we are constantly co-creating who we are through the stories we tell. And within that big story, our narrative identity, we find the villains of the piece, our limiting beliefs. These are those deep down convictions that keep us stuck in place. Things like, I'm not smart enough to start a business, or I'm too old to change careers, or I'm just not lovable. They feel like undeniable facts, like the law of gravity, but they're not. They're just sentences in a story, and any sentence can be edited. So how do you spot these villains? Martin Seligman, the same psychologist from the Learned Helplessness study, gives us a great tool: the 3 Ps. First, you ask if the belief is pervasive. Do you let one mistake at work convince you that you're a total failure in every part of your life? Second, is it permanent? Do you see a temporary setback as a life sentence with no chance of parole? And finally, is it personal? Do you blame your fundamental identity for something that went wrong, instead of just seeing it as a specific, isolated event? Just spotting these thought patterns is the first real step to taking away their power. And let's be crystal clear about why this matters so much. This isn't just about positive thinking or feeling a little more motivated. The stakes are much higher. How to make a change, rewriting your life story, can significantly impact your health. Think about it. When you hold on to stories of stress, of being a victim, of helplessness, that creates chronic anxiety and depression. And we know that has very real, very damaging consequences for your physical body.
Okay, so this all sounds really compelling, but I know some people might be thinking, is this just feel-good talk, or is there real science to back it up? So let's get into the evidence. How does changing a story in your mind actually create real measurable change in your brain and your body? You're listening to OOTO TV with research by author Paul Bulow.
This is the absolute key, Alex. Intellect isn't enough. You can read a mountain of self-help books and logically understand that a belief is limiting you, but if you don't feel it, nothing will change. Lasting change happens when the new story isn't just a thought, but an emotion. It's the feeling that actually rewires our nervous system. Emotion is what forges those new neural pathways and makes a new belief feel like the truth. And we've got the data to prove it. Look at this incredible study from Stanford University. Researchers went to one of these highly immersive events that's all about rewriting your personal story. The results they found were just staggering. On average, participants saw a 50% increase in positive emotions and a whopping 70% decrease in negative emotions like stress and anxiety. That's not a tiny bump. That's a fundamental emotional transformation. And if that number wasn't amazing enough, get this. 100% of the participants in the study who were clinically depressed were still in remission 30 days later. Now, of course, the skeptic in me wants to see the 1-year, 5-year data, but let's be real. Achieving a 100% remission rate, even for a month, from this kind of intervention it's almost unheard of. It just shows you the incredible therapeutic power we're talking about here. But to make that change last longer than 30 days, a new story needs new habits to back it up. This is where the science of habit formation is so critical. Research from places like USC Dornsife shows that people with amazing self-control aren't just willpower superheroes. It turns out they're just better at building good habits. They play offense, not defense. They engineer their environment to make good choices the easy choices. And that creates what scientists call effortless self-control, which is what makes a new story become your automatic everyday reality. Okay, so we've talked about the what and the why. Now it's time for the most important part, the how. This next section is a practical, step-by-step guide to taking the pen back and becoming the author of your own life story. I love how actionable this is. It's a 3-step process. First, gain clarity. This means you have to be brutally honest with yourself. What story have you been telling? What character have you been playing? The victim, the warrior, the martyr? You can't change a story you don't acknowledge. Second, find the gift. This is a massive mental shift. It's about reframing your past so that it happened for you, not to you. What was the lesson? What strength did you gain from that painful experience? And finally, step 3, design your new story. This is the creative part. You get to consciously choose a new, empowering role that truly serves the person you want to become. And look at this comparison here. It shows the shift perfectly. On the left, you've got these passive, limiting stories. I am a victim. I'm not good enough. They're dead ends. But look at the right. I am the comeback champion. I learn from every challenge. These aren't just empty affirmations. They are active identities. They imply action, they imply growth, they imply you are in the driver's seat. It's a shift from a story that puts you in a cage to one that sets you free. And we really have to keep hammering this point home because it's so important. This isn't just a fun mental exercise. Targeting how to make a change, rewriting your life story, results in significant impact on mental and physical health. When you focus on changing your core narrative, you are getting to the root cause of so much of the chronic stress and anxiety that plagues us, instead of just trying to put a bandage on the symptoms. This is foundational work. Okay, so you've done the work. You've designed your new story. You're the comeback champion now. Awesome. But how do you stop that old familiar victim narrative from creeping back in when things get tough? This final section is all about the practical strategies for making your new story permanent. This is where the rubber meets the road. That's right, Alex, because a new story needs a new reality to live in. First, you have to re-engineer your environment. If your new story is, I'm a healthy, active person, don't make it a battle of willpower. Make the healthy choice the easy choice. Second, leverage discontinuity. Big life changes, moving to a new city, starting a new job, they disrupt all our old environmental cues. That creates a perfect window of opportunity to install new habits. And finally, the most important one, repeat, repeat, repeat. Think about it like walking through a grassy field. The first time, it's tough. But every time you walk that same path, it gets clearer and easier until it becomes the default route. You are literally carving a new neural pathway in your brain. And that really brings it all home. The power is and always has been in your hands. You choose how to make a change. Rewriting your life story is critical to that process. But it's not a passive wish. Real, lasting change doesn't happen by accident. Targeting it requires you to have a plan, routine, and process to provide the desired result for success. It's about being a conscious, deliberate architect of your life. So we want to leave you with one final, powerful question to think about. Your past does not have to dictate your future. The pages of tomorrow are blank, and the pen is right there in your hand. Your story is not set in stone. The only real question left is, who will you decide to become today?